Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us again for another episode of the Living Beyond the Numbers podcast. I'm your host, Jude Boudreaux, and I'm here with our Director of Positivity, Caleb Arringdale.
Hello.
And today we've got a special guest with us, a longtime friend of mine and fellow Loyola New Orleans alum, Robert LeBlanc. So welcome, Robert. Glad to have you here.
Oh, excited to be here. Thank you all for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. No, looking forward to hearing more about the projects you've got going and what's new in your space. But maybe just give us a little background if you could. I know it's always, I hate doing the personal intro, but maybe just a little background on how you came to be with, LeBlanc Smith as a company has, I think a very prominent place in the hospitality industry now in New Orleans. So how do we come to this spot?
LeBlanc Smith is essentially a failed record label, Jude. I went to school at Loyola with you. We had a great experience there and studied economics and finance, and always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur and knew that I wanted to be in New Orleans. And so we started a record label right out of school. And while we didn't succeed selling records, to raise money for the label, we produced concerts, events, parties, and guerrilla marketing campaigns. And that evolved into owning our own music venue, which eventually evolved into a couple of hotel bars and a music venue. And that portfolio has now evolved into a collection of boutique hotels, restaurants, and bars located here in New Orleans, Nashville, Tennessee, and soon to be Atlanta, Georgia. A long evolution, 25-year career, and both my foundation at Loyola, which I know you benefit from as well, but also the city of New Orleans has been a magical place for this company to grow because it allowed us to make mistakes. And when we made mistakes, the community helped us and picked us back up. And so when we say New Orleans really informed who LeBlanc Smith has become, it's not just because that's our DNA, but literally the city of New Orleans. I find if you have heart and give love, they're typically a pretty forgiving place and they help you work through things. And so the company has been through many fits and starts to get to this point. As we all know, it's never a linear journey, but yeah, I feel particularly indebted to the city of New Orleans and the community here who has supported us through thick and thin.
Yeah, New Orleans is a unique place for sure. And having just been in Los Angeles, remember one of the guys at the Launchpad many years ago said, in New York, you have to be successful. In Los Angeles, you have to be beautiful. In New Orleans, you have to be yourself. And I've always thought about that because I do feel like it's a city that not only can you be yourself, but it almost, if you're trying to be something that you're not, it kind of snips it out and it makes you, brings you back to where you were supposed to be.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair.
Yeah, it's been great to see how y'all have, evolved with that. And and so, the living beyond the numbers, the idea of this podcast is to share the stories of, it's not so much the financial aspect of things, but the life part. And so how, I'm curious, so you have these hospitality companies, you're balancing those hours, which can be long and varied, especially in hotels. So how do you try to balance that with meaningful family time? How do you find the way to fit those pieces together?
One of the things that's always been really important to me, and again, I don't want to bang this drum too loudly or too frequently, but I think we learned this at Loyola, is they taught us to design the life that we wanted and then find a career and design your career to fit within that life. And so one of the things that was always really important to me was to be present in my relationships, most importantly with my wife and kids, but just in general. And so this idea of being present has always been something that resonated really loudly with me. And so the way to manage it, and there are some sacrifices, Jude. Before we had kids, I used to watch Grey's Anatomy with my wife and things like that. I don't really watch TV anymore. Before we had kids, I'd slept till 7:30. Now I'm up at 5 or 5:30. So there are some sacrifices that you make to accommodate that. But one thing that's really important to me is when I am home with my wife or with my kids, I'm not looking over my phone screen and paying attention to them secondarily. I am 100% there and I'm with them. And even when I'm in situations with friends, and there's times that we've caught up for coffee, when I'm with you, I am not checking my email while I'm sitting and talking to you. I am fully present. And you can accomplish so much more in terms of nurturing relationships just by being present. And you don't need as much time to go deep because you're fully there. And so that idea of presence has been what I call a cheat code in my ability to be be a loving father who's very much involved in my kids' lives. I'm hopefully a very supportive husband, very much involved in my wife's lives, and still a present friend and brother and son. And so those things are important. And it's the same thing in my professional context. When I'm at a property talking with the general manager, talking with the chef, I'm there. I don't have one foot in the conversation and one foot someplace else trying to multitask. And so that idea of being present allows me to get much more meaningful time, even if the time is not as long from a minutes or hours standpoint.
Oh, totally. And as somebody who struggles at times with this present thing, right? It's easy to feel that pull towards the ping of a text message. Do you have some rituals or traditions that help you stay grounded or get into that space when you're switching on to family time?
I wouldn't say it's a ritual as much as an expectation. And frankly, I'm somebody that believes in being respectful and being prompt. And I never want to be the person that you have to talk to an assistant to get to me or to get to my calendar. And I'm not judging people who do live their lives, but I never wanted to be that person. And frankly, there are times where I get behind on my correspondence, my text messages or my emails. And so the main thing is, I wouldn't necessarily call it a ritual, but I will call it an expectation, which is if I don't get back to your text in a timely manner, I will get back to it. A lot of times I spend an hour and a half or 2 hours on Sunday mornings just trying to go back through things. I try to stay on top of it. And if there are things that are really urgent or time sensitive, as soon as the text comes in, you and I have this podcast today at 2:00. If I get a text from you at 1:00 and I see it's Jude Boudreaux, I know that it's something that's incredibly time sensitive. If I get a text from one of my college friends and it's, an update on his fantasy football team, that's not so urgent. So I can kind of get back to that on the weekend. And so people understand that the trade-off is I may not get back to you in the moment, but what you do get is when I'm with you, you get all of me, and you don't have me returning everybody's texts during our time together or during our phone call together. And so, less of a ritual, but maybe more of an understanding. And then I do spend time. I believe in I can't get to zero inbox on my email, but I do believe in a zero inbox in my text messages. So I will get back to people eventually, and I'll always apologize and kind of explain what was going on, so you at least create some understanding.
How have you gotten to this point? Was this something you developed in college, or was this a learned ability as you've gotten older?
Here's a learned ability. It's interesting. I would say that I was never diagnosed, but just looking at my personality traits and my characteristics, I think I have ADD. I've always been pretty high energy. I've always been pretty peppy. I've always moved around things quickly. I remember vividly early in my career, I would spend 6 hours returning 200 emails. And by the time I was done with that, I'd hit send and receive, and you'd get 90 to 120 responses. So I'd spend another 4 hours. And I would literally spend entire days where all I did was return emails. And I just didn't understand the faultiness of that. So I worked with a business coach, and he taught me this morning routine, this morning ritual, and I still follow that to this day. And so what I do first thing when I wake up, say prayers for people that I love, for people in need, for the world at large. That's really, really important to me. I spend 5 minutes thinking about gratitude. So it's my gratitude practice is I have to recall at least 3 things that happened the day before that made me happy or for which I'm grateful. And the purpose of that is it's not big things. Of course, I love my kids and I love my dog and I'm really grateful for my house. It can't be those things. It's got to be specific moments. And what that does is it trains your mind to be really present, and you observe the beauty of a flower or the facade of a building that you've never seen before. There's all these things that we have that occur on a daily basis that your mind's just not trained to pick up on it, but they're really great things. And they're things that do bring you joy and happiness, even if it's not this overwhelming sense of elation that you feel after watching a John Candy movie. And so that gratitude piece is really, really important to me. And then I'll spend 5 to 10 minutes planning out my day. And we always start with the number one thing, which is if I can only get this one thing done today, it would be a really good day. So, and that forces your prioritization. And then you add 2 or 3 more priorities. And if you're doing deep work, you shouldn't really be able to get through more than 2 or 3 things well. And then any tasks, anything that needs to be sent to our attorney for review, that's a task. I need to upload a picture of my driver's license for the renewal of a liquor license is a task. And so I had to develop this morning routine to instill discipline in my life and my practice, and then just studying rules. And it's like anything else, it's just reps. And so now that morning routine, literally it's like brushing my teeth. And this idea of presence is kind of the same thing. It wasn't always the case, but in just talking through that and making sure that I was focused in the moment, I developed the skill. So I've developed the ability. And the other interesting thing about journaling, the gratitude and the presence thing, I used to be a really good avid note taker. And what I have learned is I don't take notes nearly as diligently now as I did 10 or 15 years ago, but it's typically not because I'm being lazy, but I don't need to. The retention, I typically retain things really well. And if there's something super crucial, like a timeline or something that I need to turn over, I'll still write things down. I'll still take notes. But I used to have these volumes and volumes of notes. And now, because I'm more focused on being present, I don't have to take notes nearly as diligently because you retain it all.
As a fellow member of the Undiagnosed ADD Club, I think those are some really great tips to keep in mind.
Full disclosure, it still takes me 30 more minutes every morning to find my car keys. So we're not all the way there. But we're getting there.
Yeah, as a diagnosed ADHD person, I'll tell you, one at times the medication helps if you are struggling with that kind of thing. If I've got a busy day, I don't need it because I engage in conversation. I'm here. Where I need it is if I've got time alone. To stay focused is always a challenge. And the one mantra that I think about constantly is like, don't put it down, put it away. So my keys go a place here and at the house. And so like, that's it. And if they're not there, it's a problem, but I don't have to think about it. I don't just put them down. I put it away. So that is from somebody's ADHD book. And I think about that several times a day.
Yeah. And it's interesting you say that, Jude, because so you just develop habits. You develop sort of workarounds and cheats. And I think I have the same inability to focus. And so what I do is like, if I have to do deep work or I have to think about something, I'll go on a walk through Audubon Park because it is multitasking. You're doing more than one thing, but it allows you to think and you're still burning energy. You're still, exercising some of those ADHD tendencies, but it's on a walk. It's not returning emails while you're also trying to write a succession plan, right? And it's not so that's another workaround. And then the other thing that I found works really well for that is listening to music in the background, but classical music, anything that's nonverbal, anything without lyrics. So there's a band Sigur Rós or a band Explosions in the Sky. Sigur Rós has vocals, but it's Icelandic band, and so you can't really recognize the vocals. So anything that doesn't have words doesn't distract me, but it assuages that and it allows me to deeply focus on the task at hand. So yeah, to both of y'all's points, just developing some of these workarounds, developing some of these systems to handle that.
I got to tell you about Sigur Rós. So I listen to a lot of kind of that ambient electronic music if I'm working on things. Karen, my wife, always it's like high-end shopping mall is like what she describes it. It's like, like little electronic vibe in the background, but nothing that's going to be too noteworthy. But I love Sigur Rós so much. And I was like, boy, what are these lyrics? And the guy made up his own language. Like, it's not even Icelandic. Yeah. It's just like his language. So like, okay, well, I'm not going to figure out what these lyrics are, but yeah, there's something so powerful about, you and I have shared about music, and that could be its own episode, but there's something so powerful about the way the emotion and what communicates with it, even though I have no idea what he's saying.
Yeah. His voice is like another instrument in the song. And then there's a band, Jude, I'm sure you're familiar with them, Explosions in the Sky.
Yeah.
That's the band that did the soundtrack for Friday Night Lights. And they don't have a vocalist, but just very, very powerful, moving songs. And that works. Explosions in the Sky works for me just as well as Sigur Rós does. But I'm with you. I love Sigur Rós. If you ask me to name my top 3 bands, they're absolutely in it.
We're always looking for background music here at the office, so I'll throw those into the shuffle. That'll be great. Many thanks.
Oh, that's awesome. It's great. You're going to love them. It's great band.
So you have these great habits that you've developed over years. How does that work with your children? How have you been able to help them, or have you worked to help them develop similar habits?
I want to be careful that my kids, they understand the value of discipline and structure. And there's certain like rigid frameworks that allow them to be more productive in school or anything they're pursuing. But at the same time, I want them to be kids too, and free play and boredom and all those things are so important to a child's development. And so we're very careful, but we do talk about values. Values are really important in our company at LeBlanc Smith. We have a really clear value system, and we talk about values each morning before school. There's 5 things that we ask them to do. It's, believe in yourself and be happy with yourself. Do something nice for someone today. Be grateful to God for all the gifts that you have. Focus only on being the best you can be, and have fun. And it's those 5 things, and they're very specific. And we talk about why those things specifically. We talk about why do something nice for someone instead of just be nice, right? Because when you do something nice for someone, you're looking for opportunities to help someone in need, to help someone who dropped their books, or to sit with someone who might be by themselves in the lunchroom. You're constantly looking for ways to pick people up. And so, and this idea of being the best you can be, as we all know, kids, one of my kids is 11, one's 14, and you could get really caught as a child. And honestly, we all have adults that we know that just, you get stuck in a cycle of comparing yourself to other people. And the reality of it is you should just compare yourself to the best version that you can be, or to who you were last year, last month, last week. And if you just focus on being the best you can be, life typically works out for you. But if you're constantly looking, you're always comparatively going to be greater than someone. You're always going to be less than someone comparatively, no matter what. And so it's not the right perspective. We do talk about the things that are important to us as parents, though. We want our kids, we talk about the context of sports. What we always say is it doesn't matter to me how much you play. It doesn't matter to me how well you play. It does matter how hard you play, because you can control that. Jude, you're a tennis player. Sometimes no matter how hard you try, you're just not hitting the ball well today, right? And that's, sometimes it comes and sometimes it goes. You can't control that always, but you can control your effort, right? And so, we talk about the value of being coachable, listening and learning and applying the knowledge, and how that translates to life also is if you're coachable, if you're teachable in a classroom, if you're capable of being mentored, you get so much more enriching interactions with people, enrichment from conversations than if you're not coachable, if you think you know it all. We talk about being a great teammate. We talk about how much easier it is and how much more joyful it is to go through life with friends, with family, with people you love. And nobody ever gets anywhere alone. And if they do, it doesn't really last, and it's typically not fulfilling. And so we do talk about values, and we also talk about discipline and hard work and the value of that. But I'm really careful not to run things too rigidly for an 11-year-old and a 14-year-old, because I don't want them to think that I'm forcing them into being someone that they feel like they have to be, or being someone that they might not be. And so we try to let them explore as well. And it's been a fascinating experience. I played college basketball and I played football really well in high school, but my kids aren't really into football and not into basketball. We have a wrestler, we have a lacrosse player. And so it's been fascinating. They are into riding bikes right now, and it gives them complete joy and passion. It's not something, we were kids, we rode bikes around the neighborhood, but they have like a bike gang. They're doing tricks and wheelies and all this stuff. And it's just a source of joy and passion that I never would have been able to expose them to if I was trying to force them down paths, because I didn't have any exposure to that. And so it's just been fascinating. And I know it's a very long-winded answer to your question, but we try to teach them concepts that will make them good people and would give them a sense of self and give them grit and determination, while at the same time letting them be free enough to explore the things that they love, so they can become who they want to be, not who they think we want them to be, or even more damagingly, who we want them to be.
Yeah, I that was a great answer. I enjoyed that. A tiny thing you mentioned, though, was like the importance of boredom. I found that as I've gotten older, as a young person, there were frequent times of boredom in life, right? Because, I was born before Google, right? So there were many times when you were just bored. Whereas now as an adult, you never have to be bored. You have your phone. You have so many things that can entertain you if you allow them to.
Right.
So it's the idea of, no, actually, and for a while it can be, wow, this is amazing. I never have to be bored again. But you realize this boredom is actually really important. It really helps kind of refocus my brain, just this time of nothingness, like how important that really is.
It really is. And it's nuanced. It's complicated, right? Like, so by default, you don't want your kids on video games all the time. But, unlike us, we were playing Super Mario Brothers on Nintendo. These kids, that's how they socialize. They don't always go to each other's houses. They don't have sleepovers as much, but they all play Fortnite or they, together. And that's how they socialize and that's how they stay in touch. And so while we'd love to be completely no video games, no computers, no YouTube, that's how these kids kind of hang out and communicate. Whereas we used to go to each other's houses and watch movies and things. And so it's tough. You just got to kind of stay on top of it, I think, and be empathetic.
It is. I mean, mine are, so I forget how close in age our kids are, but yeah, almost the same ages. And I could tell, Lucy not to ever, can't be on your phone. And then she's completely outside of her group from school because she's out of the loop. So it's how do you balance it and communicate about it and hopefully teach them so they make good choices when they're online. And yeah, it's certainly a stressful, different thing, but yeah, I've mentioned the thing that I'm not going to pretend I didn't spend all day playing video games with my friends in the summer. It just was a different environment. But so I mean, kind of continuing this thread of family. So you're now in this like family business, right? It's, LeBlanc Smith. The name is very meaningful to you and your family. And so how do you talk to your children about like this idea of entrepreneurship and family business? Is it something that they're curious about?
They are curious about it. And we, one of the things that we always try to do is we try to make sure we're presenting the most honest aspects of our life, our profession, when we make mistakes. So COVID, we have a hospitality business in New Orleans. New Orleans was hit really hard by COVID. So it was particularly restrictive and it hurt us emotionally, financially, in so many ways. But we never shielded the kids from that. We were really honest about that. And the other thing we did is we didn't really blame COVID. And the reality of it is COVID was tough, but had we done things differently, had we done things better, had we maybe done things more conservatively prior to COVID, we would have been in a much stronger position financially to endure COVID or survive COVID. We did survive COVID, but it was pretty painful. But it wasn't painful because of COVID in and of itself. It's painful because I didn't prepare for a situation like COVID. So I talked to them really honestly about that, Jude. And then every step of what we do, I try to, if they're interested, I'll try to show them. So we're working on a new project called Love's Alibi in Nashville. And so I showed them the iterations of the logo and why we're choosing this look and this color palette. And they asked questions. And I actually heard a really cool thing. Jason Hamill is my best friend, but he also does all of our brand identity. And it's where our projects start, is I'll always share an idea with Jason first. And he helps. He's a great filter. And he's also really honest. And he tells me if it sucks quickly. He's a big fan of the fast no or the fast it sucks, as opposed to sort of the slow it sucks. And so it's great. But Jason said that he was texting with my 14-year-old Bear, who designed a logo for his best friend in 8th grade's car detailing company that they want to start. So I guess it is taking, Jude, to your point. And so we want to be really careful, again, not to feel like they are forced into this or they're obligated, but we do talk about it. And we talk about different entrepreneurial ideas and sort of things they might start doing now, washing windows in the French Quarter for the restaurants down there, cleaning out garbage cans in the French Quarter, because in the summer in particular, those things start to get a little smelly. If you're a seafood restaurant in the French Quarter, that's tough. So we always try to show them what we're doing on a step-by-step basis, but we also share really honestly both the ups and the downs. And we're really careful, even on the ups, we're really careful to talk about the reality of, like, we're clear to point out who on the team drove that success. So it's never their mom and me created this awesome place, or their mom and me got this recognition from Travel and Leisure for the new hotel in the French Quarter. It's like the team at the Celestine warranted recognition as one of the best new hotels by Condé Nast Traveler. It wasn't me. And that's a really important thing for us to teach our kids. I understand that. I understand that we wouldn't be who we are without all the people in our lives, not just the people we work with today, the people we worked with 10 years ago and higher up and further back. Family, friends, teachers, coaches, mentors, teammates. And so we're really, really clear to talk in that context with our kids. I don't ever want them to think that they, no matter how great they are, that they can do it by themselves. It's always a function of a ton of great people who give you a lot personally and professionally.
you've been very successful in your business. We have many clients who've been very successful in their businesses. How do you raise children in that environment where you've been very successful? How do you raise them with the expectation of, yes, you don't want to be crushed by my success, but I want you to rise to your own success, like find your own version of success. How does that work?
It starts with how we define success. So I always tell my kids that like I have an incredibly successful life, but I define that success very differently. The reason why I think that I have a successful life is I'm tremendously happy and I have a sense of self and I have a purpose. I have something that I really care about working on that I think can leave the world in a better place. I'm happy. Like my default position is happiness and gratitude. And so that's the most important thing. But I also have a wife who I love dearly, who supports me tremendously. We have two amazing kids and I love being their dad and I feel really lucky to be their dad. And I think that's the most important job I'll ever have. And I have tons of meaningful relationships in my life. I'm still really tight with my parents. I'm tight with my siblings. I've got tons of wonderful friends. I've got a great relationship with people that I work with. I get to work with people I love, people who inspire me. And I get to work on something every day that I really enjoy doing. And those are the things that we talk about. We never talk about, I've never defined success on the number of places we have or the awards that we've gotten or the amount of revenues the company generates or the profits that the company generates. And so it's how you define success. And that's important to me because I want them to understand, LeBlanc Smith could become a company that does $200 million a year in sales with a 20% profit margin or whatever. And they could be a high school math teacher and they could be every bit as successful, if not more successful than I am as a high school math teacher. And because of the lives that they impact and because of how they might be able to inspire each one of those kids that they teach. And so that's it. That's how we talk about success. And that's the most important thing to us. And we set up those constructs and I want them to truly believe that. Look, my oldest son, I'm not convinced he won't be in law enforcement. I'm not convinced he wouldn't be potentially a police officer, or he's got celiac disease, so I don't think he could be in the military. But he's really drawn to this idea of, the most altruistic version of those jobs of like helping people, and he's fascinated with television shows of police officers helping people or military people helping other people or saving people and things. And so I don't want him to feel like because he wants to be a police officer or a fireman and he's not going to make $1 million a year doing that, I don't want him to feel like he's not a success. As long as he's the best police officer or firefighter that he can possibly be. And as long as he's got meaningful relationships in his life and he's happy and he's got a sense of self and he positively impacts the world, that's every bit as successful as Warren Buffett is. Yeah,
that's so great. And I mean, it's rhymes so much with, there's a guy, Jay Hughes, wrote this really thick book about family wealth. So it's a dense read. There's a lot of great things in it, but the thing I talk about most often is this idea of the pillars. And so, yeah, there's there's financial wealth, and that's easy to measure, but there's also intellectual, or not financial capital, but intellectual capital. Like somebody might go, as mentioned, be a teacher. They may go and become a PhD and do research. There's spiritual capital because they can be involved in their faith organization and work in that realm. There can be social capital because they're working in doing things to help society, or maybe in the political realm, or running a nonprofit. And then there's a fifth one that is kind of for the family to define. But to talk about your family across those capital lines, because for many people, once if your parents have achieved a certain level of success, it's not it's not the 1800s. It's not always going to be that you will be more financially successful, perhaps, than the generation before. So we have to find ways to talk about this and ensure that family success is about honoring those things. It's not about having more money.
Yeah, 100%. And Caleb, the other thing that's important to us is that, my wife and I have always lived a pretty simple life. That was important to me. This idea, I study Stoic philosophy, and it's, this idea of enough, right? And so I drive a $40,000 Jeep. I live in a great 2,600 square foot home that's on a nice street in a decent neighborhood, but it's not on St. Charles Avenue here in New Orleans. And that's important to me. But that being said, we can travel, we can go wherever we want to go. That, we don't have, I consider us wealthy because we don't have the fear of like, how are we going to pay our next mortgage? We don't have a fear of like, how will we pay our bills in 2 years? And so I'm really clear that we are financially, to me, that's the definition of wealth. And so, I don't apologize for that reality, but what I do think is important is when you are in those situations, you need to find opportunities that life will present to give your kids a sense of grit and to put them in safely uncomfortable situations so that they can learn and grow and develop their own intestinal fortitude. And so the COVID situation is a great example. Being honest about that, being honest about why we had to sell our house, being honest about the mistakes that I made before COVID that led to me having to sell the house so that we could save the company. And then, like the phoenix from the ashes, talking honestly about how we dug out of it and about how these tough things, COVID, we're not there quite yet, but there's a point, maybe a year, maybe 2 years, where COVID, which cost me a tremendous amount personally, more so than it cost financially. It was a tremendous amount financially as well, and emotionally, it broke my heart. But it was the best thing that ever happened to me because I used it as an opportunity to learn from it and grow from it. And I didn't use it as an opportunity to point and make an excuse that COVID did this to me. And so that's been awesome. And then you look for opportunities in life to put them in safely uncomfortable situations. For instance, my oldest son played tackle football at Harrell Playground. It's an all-black playground. He was the only white kid. And it was a fantastic experience for him. He learned so many things. He was playing on that Harrell football team, and he was playing on a lacrosse team at the same time, all white kids on the lacrosse team. The things the kids talked about before and after practice on the Harrell team, same exact things the kids talked about before and after practice. The way the parents at Harrell engaged their kids and the other kids on the team was exactly the same as the way the parents engaged the kids and the other kids on the team for lacrosse. And I know that, we know that because we're old enough to have that perspective. But for an 8 or a 9-year-old to learn that at that age, it's been tremendous for him. But it wasn't always easy for him relative to what a lot of his peers were doing. We believe in, they both boxed in a gym that was primarily people of color in a neighborhood that's very different than the neighborhood they currently live in. And, these things take courage and they cause them to stretch a bit. But because of that, they become stronger and they develop different inner strength than they maybe otherwise would, because we make it a point to lean into these situations that I call, safely uncomfortable situations. And so we look for that as much as we can. They're big believers in them doing jujitsu and martial arts because, this ability to sort of learn and be humbled every day when you go there, it's just like life. No matter how good you get, you'll always be able to beat someone in the gym, but you'll always be beaten by someone in the gym too. And so that's a really important dichotomy and reality of life. And so we also try to, when you talk about how we raise our kids in the context of success, it's not just how we define success, which has nothing to do with monetary or recognition. The same time, we look for opportunities actively to put them in situations that I know will develop intestinal fortitude and will be stretch situations for them that I know that they'll endure. It just gives them greater sense of self, greater self-confidence, their ability to relate to people who didn't grow up in their neighborhood, who don't look just like them, is pretty remarkable. And life gives you those opportunities all the time, sometimes involuntarily, like COVID, and sometimes voluntarily. So you just kind of keep your eyes open for those things.
Yeah, totally. Well, enjoying this conversation a lot, but I'm also noticing the clock, so we've got to shift over to a few rapid fire questions to kind of wrap this up here. First and most important, favorite animal, Robert?
Have to be a bear. Kind of cliche, but yeah.
So this is a strange question. How tall are you, Robert?
6 feet 6 inches.
Okay, so far every person we've had over 6'4" has chosen a bear as their favorite animal. So I'm currently correlating human size with liking bears.
That's remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, we have three or four people on the team that are over 6'4", right? So yeah, it comes up a lot.
That's cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So our son's name's Bear, but one of the reasons why we named him Bear was I've known 3 bears before him growing up, and they're all awesome guys. I've never met a guy that's named Bear, called Bear, that wasn't an incredibly nice guy. And the same thing for anybody named Will or William. That's our second son's name. I've never met a Will who's a bad guy.
My uncle's named William, but he's pretty cool, so I guess we're fine.
Yeah.
Right.
That's awesome.
What do you think is the best money you ever spent?
I think the best money you spend is always educational experiences. So books.
Yeah.
secondarily like experiences, right? But I think if you think about it foundationally, the things that I've gotten from books, the inspiration, the learning, that has given me the ability, the means to be able to go on these trips and have these experiences. So books.
Yeah. No, I love that. I have a section on my bookshelf here that is the like books that changed my life section. And it's, yeah, I've read them all, but I always make sure I have a copy so I can give one away because they did have an impact and I try to tell the kids like these ideas changed me as I grew and as I went through things. So
I know you're a pretty avid reader too, but I got to tell you, I love y'all's office. I love this location. I would be in so much trouble because you're just right on top of Octavia Books. I'm sorry, Garden District Books. I would be there, and I would be ordering these books that I wouldn't have the time or the bandwidth to read. But I'm actually very proud of your restraint because I know you have that itch that I have too. So that's kudos to you. I commend you.
So much easier now too to like go up there at 4:00 and grab a cocktail and a book, and so it just amplifies the temptation for sure. All right, how about travel? Any like favorite place you've ever been?
My favorite place to go is I love nostalgia. My favorite place to go is when we go back to Long Island every year to visit my wife's family. She grew up in Southampton. She's quick to remind everybody she's a townie. You know, she didn't grow up next to the CEO of Goldman Sachs. But it's a magical experience for my kids because I'm from South Louisiana. My wife's from Long Island, and my kids are half New Yorkers, half South Louisianian. And I think that's a magical combination. And so they're really clear on their South Louisiana heritage and roots, and they get exposed to that all the time. But it's 1 week a year. Hopefully we can get back there more often, where we just go back and we deeply immerse them in their mother's roots. And, you know, we're not obviously going to like fancy nightclubs or exclusive white parties. We are on the lakes and going to the bays, and we are sort of kayaking and going to the clam shacks and all that stuff. And so that's my favorite place to go to be every year. And over time, we've developed some great friends out there also. So we see them and we see my wife's parents, who are amazing. So that's my favorite place. That's my favorite trip. And we've been on some great trips. We've done all the kind of more nice things too, but it's what that means to me and my kids to be back home for my wife is really cool.
Nice. Well, and it's a lot of parallels though with our Cajun ancestors too, who made their way down the coast from there. The accent is strangely similar. You get locals in both of those places. So Robert grew up down the bayou like I did to some degree, although in the big city of Houma. So yeah. So 50,000 or so people, not the 2,000 that I had.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, right then, a place you've always wanted to go that you haven't been yet.
I'd love to take my kids to Paris. I've always been a little intimidated with the language barrier. I always wanted to go and do it more immersively than maybe having a guide or a translator. And so I've been taking Duolingo classes, but I need to just get over it and go.
Yeah. It's, I mean, I will tell you the strange thing, having grown up around the language, even if, I had high school French and not a lot more, you understand a lot more than you'll realize. Now, speaking it back is a challenge, but like, I know you just asked to open the window, and like why I remember that, I don't know, but like you pick up stuff. That's
cool.
Yeah. Nice. Well, and then last one. So best advice you think you've ever gotten?
Do cool shit and stay humble.
I love that. Well, that's perfect, I think, to wrap us up today. But yeah, is there more of a story behind where that came from? Yeah,
the definition of cool is not the way it's used in modern vernacular. He's cool t-shirt, cool car. It's cool as being comfortable in your own skin and doing things with a timeless sense of style. So doing things that will last, investing in relationships that will last, doing work that will last. And then the stay humble piece is don't ever take that for granted. Don't ever think that you didn't have tons of support and help to accomplish those cool things. And don't ever think that just because you accomplish those things that you can't always be constantly learning and growing so that you can become a better version of yourself in a year than you are today. The nuance of that should be, though, that you are proud of who you are. And that's where the cool comes in. You're comfortable in your own skin today, but you're humble enough to know that you can continuously learn and grow. So I think it's a great way to approach life on a macro level, but also a micro level. So do cool shit and stay humble. That's fantastic. All right, Caleb, any final thoughts? No, appreciate it. This has been a really great conversation. Appreciate your time. Thank you all. It's been awesome. Yeah, no, thanks so much, Robert, for joining us. It really has been great to hear you share your story. And
And yeah, also to wrap us up, and thank all of you for watching listening to the Living Beyond the Numbers podcast. I am Jude Boudreaux, and you can reach me, Jude, at theplanningcenter.com. You can reach Caleb at caleb@theplanningcenter.com. And you can reach Robert. It's Robert at LeBlancSmith.com. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, perfect. Thanks again for watching. Please like, subscribe, share, comment. Let us know what questions you have, and we'll be around to help out. So thanks again. Take care.